My name is Trisha Leon, and if you've watched this to the end, I just want to break down a couple things for anybody listening. I did contact the governor. I contacted the governor of Utah because my nephew was isolated. He was a foster care child, not an out-of-control teen. He was isolated for the first 2 weeks and had no contact with family, no contact with mom or anybody. And he had told me when he cried, they wanted him to stop crying because it caused a disruptance, and they wanted him to cry quieter, or like, so he cried quieter. And he had asked me how did I find him. So for the first 2 weeks, my nephew was isolated. No, he thought no one knew where he was. And I just was really just distraught and devastated about that. Later, my nephew had said that he was punched in the stomach by another child, and then he said that he had had another incident with a child, and that staff had slammed him on the wall really hard. He had told me about forced blood draws. Later was placed on an immense amount of antipsychotics. I come from a caregiving background, so I'm very familiar with antipsychotics because I worked with children and adults with disabilities. The medication that they had placed my nephew on, the medications that they had placed him on, were not age appropriate. The dose was extreme. When I went to visit him in person, his eyes were very dilated, and it caused a huge concern for me. Logan didn't get the letters I sent him on a weekly basis. After I reported the drug risperidol, Logan was taken off of that drug because they did know that he wasn't supposed to be prescribed it for his age. And that's when social workers decided to cut me off. In the videos, they kind of blame Provo quite a bit, but as you see in the beginning, Christina had said that it was up to the department, and the department, made the decision, which later on and off, they said, Tawana had told me that it was up to them also whether I had contact or not, but then they tried to kind of point the finger at Provo for, not allowing me to have conversation. Later blaming me for my interactions with my nephew, even though I had encouraged him. I let him know I didn't know, when I could get him, or, I didn't have a definitive time frame, and that I was sorry about that, but I was still trying. I also let him know that it was up to the judge and his mom in the state, and talked about it in a very age-appropriate way. And yeah, so, later on he got moved to Patriot Center. I finally, after about almost 2 months, got a conversation with my nephew, and I actually got a very aggressive text from Tawana stating that I had stipulations of what I could and could not talk to my nephew about, and they did not want me to let him know that he was being moved to Patriot Center. And to me, that is more damaging, to move my nephew from Provo to Patriot Center, not let him know anything that's going on, not let him know his fate, not let him know when he gets to go home. He had mentioned going home many, many times and just feeling really homesick and scared. His first day at Patriot Center, he had told me a man twisted his arm with a front forward twist, and that it hurt really bad. Social workers say that he wasn't hurt. Everybody said he wasn't hurt. But the thing is when my nephew, or, when you hear the differences in videos from, the social worker to the staff to the counselor later on that I had talked to later on, they continuously changed their story about what happened. When I visited my nephew, he showed me what had happened, and he told me he was sitting right where I was sitting, which was directly against a wall. So the controlled trained hold that I watched that you guys do in your state, there was no way for two adults to get behind my nephew and do the hand lock, interlock. And so at that point I knew for sure that my nephew was telling the truth because there was no way for them to get behind him. He was having an emotional reaction to his things being taken, which I had told social workers many times prior that was an extreme, an emotional trigger for him, because that was used as a kind of like a psychological discipline that hurt Logan. He was always kind of getting his stuff taken and said that, he didn't deserve it or he was bad and stuff like that. As far as my sister, she loves her son, and I'm 110% supportive of my sister and her son having a relationship. I'm 110 supportive of Logan and his father having a relationship, and not at any point uh, was I trying to care for my nephew to disrupt those two subjects. Um, we're all family, and I definitely believe in building bridges, and Logan deserves those bridges. Um, I just wanted to be a place for my nephew to be comfortable, because he has been so uncomfortable and traumatized, and um, my nephew had, I can't stress this enough, my nephew had no behavioral problems before entering any of these schools or these programs. My nephew had no antipsychotic or psychotic issues, no bipolar issues. The only thing my nephew had was an IEP for dyslexia. Social workers wrote on his report that his IEP had behavioral issues, lied in court. They also wrote about an incident that happened at Provo, but it was actually an incident that happened with Rosemary at Patriot Center, and tried to amp up his behaviors lying under oath. They were upset with me because a report was made about the drug risperidol, and they had said somebody had contacted them. I had told them multiple times I had no idea who they were talking about, swear under oath I have no idea who they were talking about or what the situation was. Um, and they had retaliated for the reports that were made, um, that, you know, I felt needed to be made to keep my nephew safe, and the fact that I was a mandated reporter. At the end of that conversation, I had said that I felt like this was some sort of retaliation, and there was a conversation about don't twist my words. After that conversation, they had pulled the affidavit. They had put that my nephew had lived with me, and that the department had looked for family members for Logan to go to, but in Pennsylvania and in Washington, there was abuse allegations, and that Logan had lived with me, but a police enforcement or law enforcement was called, and my nephew Logan was deemed in imminent danger. I later got harassing emails saying I was no longer an option. I asked if I could move to Idaho, if that would change things. They told me they wouldn't give me a foster license. I would not be approved. They told me that my ICP worker had said atrocious things about me that weren't true, because I have my ICPC report, and that there were so many concerns. I have a foster license, a social service degree. I worked with children with disabilities. I've never been in trouble a day in my life. Logan's never been taken from my custody. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to get a foster license or pass my ICP. I am a productive member of society. I worked at Raymond Hall Juvenile Justice Center. I have how to take care of a child with trauma. I have how to deal with challenging behaviors. I contacted a private school for my nephew to go to. I found a counselor in Seattle, which was the best counselor, like, I guess, in Washington. There was also a Mary Bridge neurological counselor that I told them about later on, that I would get like an initial evaluation with them too, to see if there's any type of neurology things that need to be looked into. At one point I did mention some MMA thing. I had said, because they had kept saying he was aggressive and he needed to work with different groups, and I said, well, maybe we could do like MMA and turn this negative into a positive, and that there was a really good boys program where they told you about using that as, your body is a weapon, and that you will only use it to, like, if you're in danger, and they build structure, and they talk about respect, and It was something that I had just kind of spit out and made more of a reality of the thing than I really intended. I was just like, I just was trying to prove to them that I was willing to do whatever it took to make sure my nephew was taken care of, and that, assure them that his aggression wouldn't be a problem. Mentioning a sport, if he was doing sports, he'd be pooped out, and they totally took it out of context, made me look really ignorant and weird. I also contacted Greater Lakes. I can go to my nephew's school once a week. So he would go to school once a week. I created a positive behavior support plan for him because I've done positive behavior supports in my career. Uh, yeah, I had two options: one 5-star school, one 4.5-star school. Um, Put Sylvan Tutor, contacted $30,000 school, like that's all documented. Was more than happy to pay for that to ensure his success in education. And no matter what I did, it always seemed like I was never an option, and that they were never trying to release my nephew, not to mom, not to his father, and not to me. And honest to God, like I just never at any point believed that they were going to let my nephew go. Um, and lo and behold, that's what's starting to happen. They use the argument of reunification, but if reunification was on the table, what did we create ICPs for? There's a treaty between states where that's what these were created for. And if we're going to go ahead and put the child first, then we have to think about what he's going through now, what the damages have been, and the fact that it's definitely prominent and evident that children are severely damaged from this. I don't want my nephew to have abandonment issues, feeling unloved or feeling trusted towards, people who are in power, or, because he's had such a raw experience. Um, Another thing that, really caught my attention was the fact that Rosemary had said that, in this Patriot Center program, that children were getting their GED and high school diploma. Um, so, when they're saying that about my 13-year-old nephew, I'm getting the big picture that they are not having any plans to let my nephew go. Um, and this is probably the worst case scenario I've ever experienced in my entire life. Um, the things that my nephew says to me is atrocious. They made me look like a liar. I've always been my nephew's go-to. Um, and like I can't even describe like how injustice is. I've tried for a long time to call every single lawyer I can think of in the state of Boise, Idaho, and um, nobody gives rights to family members. But what do you do in a situation where a social worker is lied under oath, and then I try to enter the court, like I tried to submit documents to prove what they said was a lie, because I have all the evidence and all the documents. And no matter what I've tried to enter the court, I keep getting barred, or I don't know how to do the system. They revved up what my sister has done, and that was pretty wrong, because my nephew is now under the impression that in 3 months he gets to go home. And my sister has not completed her psychological vow. She got an ICP sent, but she decided not to do it, and she couldn't pass the background because she had an ongoing criminal thing going on. His father has a case with a minor child that is going to make it to where he is not obtainable, or he's probably not going to be able to attain Logan. And so realistically, they just set my nephew up for 3 months, and they say that my nephew just thinks he's going home. And this is what's been really like heart-wrenching for me, because every 3 months my nephew thinks he gets to go home. And he's been told by judges or by social workers or whatever. And then like we just kind of got zipline sideline with this whole thing, where they pulled the affidavit. Did it like the first one said I was great, and then Rosemary got in trouble or something, a report was made, And then next thing you know, they pulled the affidavit and read all these lies under oath and did an update to the court. And so, you know, my nephew had told me prior to going to Patriot Center, like, I'm going to be good, you know, I'm going to do exactly what the judge said. And then I talked to him again and he says he was scared. And I said, you know, it's going to be okay. I'm always going to be here for you. And then, you know, after the court hearing too, they barred me for a while. And they've done that consecutively. Anytime I made a report to protect my nephew, they barred me from seeing him, barred me from speaking with him, became angry with me, disgruntled with me. And the whole, you know, reason I was doing this, one, because I'm a mandated reporter, and two, it wasn't anything against CPS or social services. It was about the law in the school and in defending the right of my nephew. And he had been through so much prior to getting placed in this place, and I just needed to know that he was safe and he was okay and he was happy, and he's been everything but. So I hope that whoever is listening to this, that, you know, one person sees this and corrects this and lets my nephew go home, because he really misses home, and he just spent his birthday behind, you know, a fence with barbed wire. He couldn't have a regular birthday. I do not want him to miss Thanksgiving and Christmas. He missed the whole summer and normalcy, and he got his poor dog ripped out of his hand. Like this is, I mean, this is a clear evidence of showing his decline. He's failing school in Idaho, and he's not okay. He's not himself. And for his sanity, his mental health, and if anybody is considering the best interest of Logan, they'll just let him go home so he can feel comfortable until my sister, you know, completes her requirements, or the dad, you know, completes whatever requirements. And as soon as they're done and everything's good to go, I'm more than happy to go, okay, here you go. You know, I'm very supportive to that. And so I hope that somebody sees this and sees the how wrong this is, and does something to help my nephew. His name is Logan Williams. He's out of Adam County, and he's currently resides at Patriot Center. I haven't talked to him in a little while. I try to write letters. I don't know if he's getting them or not. And yeah, I hope that somebody listening can do something for him. And thank you for watching this long video.